everyone, thanks for tuning in again to this English episode of 99 zu 1, Krieg und Frieden mit Jakob. We have a guest today, it's Rula Daood. Hello,
Hi.
Rula, nice to be like that you're here.
Thank you for inviting.
Yes, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
Rula Daood is a Palestinian citizen of Israel and the national co-director of the NGO Standing Together, a grassroots Jewish Arab movement fighting for peace, equality, and social justice. She's a trained speech therapist who became one of the most prominent voices of anti-war and anti-racist activism within Israel. Rula has helped lead mass mobilizations from protests against the Gaza war to campaigns for housing and workers' rights. Yeah, and today we want to talk about the politics of Israel at war and your activism fighting against it.
Yeah.
Okay. Just as a starter, we're living in troubled days. There's a new war on top of the other wars.
Yes.
Israel attacked Iran. Iran is retaliating. And you are stranded in Berlin these days. It's hard for you to get back because many flights are cancelled, or basically more or less all of them. So how do you feel?
Oh, it's the biggest question to start with. How do I feel? Puzzled. My mind isn't. I'm not settled on one thing. Like, I don't know where I'm going, what I want to do, but at the end of the day, there's a huge feeling of I just want to go back home. And it's crazy to want to go back home, to go back to a war zone. But yes, it is. It's difficult to be here while your parents, your friends, your colleagues are being bombed again into a much bigger war. So I hope I can find a flight in the next few days. But if not, I will do a 3 days going back home journey. Yes.
Okay, so let's dive into it a bit more. The Israeli government claims to be targeting Iranian military infrastructure, but also hundreds of civilians have been killed. We've all seen the videos of the burning residential building in Tehran. There were car bombings, assassinations of scientists and their wives. So can you walk us through a bit what has happened over the past 2 weeks and explain a bit how did we get to this point?
Yeah. To explain, I think the politics, what's happening inside of the Israeli society and the political atmosphere in Israel is that there is a government that most people do not trust from within the Israeli society. They do not support. And through, it will be 2 years to the war, of annihilation on Gaza. And the fact that the Israeli government does not have any exit plan, does not have any strategy, do not know what to do. So what they decide to do, the government of Bibi and Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, is to go on from one war to another. Because unfortunately, when this war on Iran, if you see the polls, has more than 70% of the people approving it. And that kind of approval is there because for more than 12 years, Bibi Netanyahu, as long as he's been a prime minister, he has always talked about the Iranian danger, the atomic bomb that will be thrown on Israel. So there is this mood of surviving from within, especially the Jewish Israeli society, that we need to strike down Iran. But I think the real question is why now? Why to decide to open another front, to open another war, where you have a war, you're basically annihilating Gaza, having a war with Lebanon, still bombing in Lebanon, still bombing in Syria. So why open another war with Iran? My answer would be because it is a survival war for this government. Because Bibi Netanyahu knows that when he will strike down, 1, 2, 3, 4 missiles on Tehran, it will show him as someone who is victorious. Especially because October the 7th has been, could have been the end of his career, but he again longered it with doing more wars and striking down more Gaza. And the situation right now is that it's a week since it all began.
Yes.
And 24 people are killed from Israel, inside of Israel. I think more than 600 people are killed in
Yes.
Iran. And just to tell you more numbers, more than 400 people, Palestinians in Gaza were killed through this week, just this week. People are waiting for it.
So many of them at those 8 delivery stations.
Yes. So we are at a place where everybody is looking what will be the next step, knowing that politically and on the tactics of a war, Israel cannot hold this war against Iran for long unless the United States decides to step in. And this is, I think, the big question for everybody. Will Trump decide to help or will he not help? And meaning that there would be some kind of a strategic winning and some kind of a political deals holding on. But the Israeli atmosphere, the politics of it all, of the people who are looking in it, is that at the end of it, we are again stuck in an endless war. We're again found in a place where more people are going to be killed. And this is a reality that cannot be accepted. And of course, not for more than 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, your group Standing Together is one of the few movements in Israel actively organizing against the government's wars. Not just issuing statements, but really mobilizing people on the ground, on the streets. We will talk later about your work around Gaza, but first, what is your group doing these days concerning the war against Iran? Of course, you are.
No, we cannot go out demonstrate.
Yes,
we're not allowed, and then you have missiles, so
yes,
you can't do any public kind of gathering for more than 30 people. So you can demonstrate a lot of things that you cannot do. But since the first strike, we understood that the same after October the 7th. You have a lot of fear within peoples. The fact that, again, our government started a war with not being even ready. People who would run for shelter from missiles, who do not have shelters. So we try to do solidarity work. Most of our activists for the last week, since the beginning of the war with Iran, have been doing solidarity work, which means cleaning and opening more shelters for people to be able to go in, cleaning also homes that have been struck down, by the missiles that came from Iran, and trying to hold the solidarity, because in each and every war, the Israeli society is a mix of 80% Jews and 20% Palestinians, all of them living inside of Israel. And in each and every war, the government tries to separate between people. So you have more hatred and you have more discrimination, and you say more bad things about the 20% Palestinians in order to break the unity between people. So we try to hold that solidarity by doing these actions together. And the campaign we started last day was a campaign asking for people to donate money in order to bring shelters to the Bedouin villages in the south of Israel. And I think you don't know, but in the south of Israel, you have a lot of Bedouin Arab villages who do not have a village. You have no streets. You live in tents, basically. So you also don't have shelters. So we are asking people to donate so we can buy, a shelter and you can build it in there. Until today, we were able to gather money for 2 of these shelters, which is a great start. And again, it is an act of solidarity. We stand together at times of war.
In practical terms, how long does it take to actually build the shelter then?
Actually, they are already built, which is also amazing. The fact that the government decides not to put shelters again, while they know that there are thousands of people, more than 10,000 people who have no homes, no streets. They shelter, in the tunnels of places near them. And they will be put in 10 different, villages, unrecognized villages, by Thursday.
Okay.
Yes.
That reminds me just of an article I read yesterday. I think it was from yesterday or day before yesterday on Al Jazeera. They wrote about the discrimination of access to shelters, like that you can almost call like, I don't know, shelter apartheid, maybe like in like polemic terms, but I think it's kind of accurate.
Yeah, it's a huge discrimination.
Yes, can you talk about that, like the access to shelters?
Yeah, of course. I will give you, simple numbers. I was born in a small village, Palestinian village called Kufr Yusif. It's in the north of Israel. And in my village that has 11,000 people today, you only have 2 public shelters. One public shelter can have 150 people. Within the homes of people, you don't have shelters. Most of the homes were built before the 80s. So you don't really you are not obliged to have, build a shelter. But it is a systematic way that when you look at the numbers of shelters within Palestinian villages and cities to the one, the Jewish cities inside of Israel, you would see a huge discrimination that a bomb that fell from Iran on Tamra, which is a Palestinian city in the north, had 0 shelters for a population of, tens of thousands of people, killing for, members of one family. But the Jewish city next to it had more than 120 shelters. Yes, it is an act of discrimination, like many things that you will face between, Jewish and Palestinian cities or villages inside of Israel. And it is because the government does not value our lives as the same as, lives of Jewish citizens of Israel. It is a policy.
Also, just as a side note, maybe first, like just for learning, do you agree to the idea that there's apartheid?
There is. You mean within the borders of Israel?
Like there are like different levels, like some say only in the West Bank is apartheid, some say also like as the latest Amnesty report that also like Israel proper, that there is some kind of apartheid. What is your stance on that?
If you look at what does apartheid mean, is the fact that a minority are ruling the majority of the people who live there. So this is happening in Khalil, Hebron. I don't know how you call it in English.
Hebron.
Hebron, where you have 300 settlers living in the center of Hebron, which is a Palestinian city, and controlling the lives of all of the people. And you have streets only for Jews and streets only for Palestinians, and you have, army roaming the streets each and every day. That is apartheid. Okay, it is an apartheid. Within the borders of Israel, there is a huge discrimination between Jews and non-Jews. I do not live the same reality that my people live in the West Bank. I do not live the same reality that is within Hebron or Ramallah. It's a very different circumstances. I do have an Israeli passport and an Israeli ID. I am an Israeli citizen. I can vote for the Israeli government, the Israeli Knesset. But people in East Jerusalem, Ramallah, Hebron can do the same. This is the difference between Palestinian citizens of Israel and Palestinians within the West Bank and occupied territories by Israel. But inside of Israel, there are a huge discrimination. In 2018, a law was sanctioned, the nation-state law, that basically says that there are first-class citizens who are Jews and second-class who are non-Jews. So this is the difference between us. Yes, there is an apartheid. Yes, Israel does have an apartheid going on within Palestinian territories that they occupy, and within the Israeli state, there's a huge discrimination, and I would say also Jewish supremacy.
Okay. You mentioned earlier already the 70% support for the war against Iran among
I think a bit
the
more
population.
even.
I think also it was 71.
Yeah.
But I read it on Times of Israel yesterday. They broke down the numbers a bit, like for ethnicities.
Yeah.
So, and while 82% of Jewish Israelis support the war in Iran, that number collapses to just 11% among Arab or Palestinian citizens of Israel. How is this? I don't know. How's this war being sold to the public, and how do you interpret this dramatic,
It's a good question.
Most
Most polls maybe I would start by a bit describing the differences that we have. I live in Jaffa today, which is a mixed city. You have both Jews and you have Palestinians living in it. And in my old building, I have Jewish neighbors and I have Palestinian neighbors, and we live in the same building, all of us. But when you enter my apartment, you will see me watching, Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, news that come, Arabic speaking news. This would be the more mainstream news that I will put, like my dad, like my mom, like most of the Palestinian citizens in Israel. When you go to my neighbor, and he will be watching channel 12, 13, and Oh God, 14, which is a very racist channel. But this became the mainstream. So what we both consume is very different, okay? We live at the same apartment, but we consume very different ways of, of analysis of what's really happening. I see the destruction in Gaza, and I see what's happening also in Iran, but I also see what's happening in my own land because I live there. And I see how war is bad to the people and they affecting the people. But my neighbor will see the proper, I would say, the news of what the Israeli government wants you to see, which is how great we are, how hero we are. We struck down the one, country that has been threatening Israel for more than 20 years to demolish it, and they have a ticking clock of when they will demolish Israel. So the sense of survival and being afraid is there. And it's there, and it's big and huge towards, I think, the majority of the Jewish Israeli society. So when you see your government and the army striking down Iran, at the beginning of it, you have this euphoria of, yes, this is a huge enemy that we should have been striking down many years before. But for Palestinians, you see it as a continuance to the annihilation war that has started in Gaza. You also see that people are still being killed and bombed in Gaza. And it takes you to a place where you understand who is really suffering and you want this to stop. Because also the ones who are suffering from the missiles who are coming from Iran are all of us. But a simple fact is that Palestinian citizens of Israel don't have the same shelters as other cities, Israeli, Jewish cities. So these are the kind of, differences in our daily lives, in the media that we have, that gives you a very different, amount of polling at the end of the day.
On your website and your social media and in your previous work and interviews, you often stress that standing together is not just like a protest movement, but an attempt to build lasting political power from below.
Yes.
Can you please present that approach a bit more? And what's the philosophy behind standing together?
First of all, we are a grassroots movement. We started at the end of 2015, the beginning of 2016, because we see and we understand that at the end of it, the only one that can help us and save us from our own reality and future is us, the people living in Israel, Palestine. The political system in Israel has failed the people for the last more than 25 years. And the politicians that we have do not speak on the benefit of the people. Like when you look at it, even now, after October the 7th, the call by even the opposition, the opposition to the Bibi and his very right-wing government hasn't been a real opposition, because whenever there is a war and a strike down on Gaza, they salute it. When he went on to another war with Iran, they saluted. They do not give a real opposition. But when you look at the people living in Israel, you understand that polls have said that most people, at the end of the day, they want to live in safety. And they want to live in a reality where they can end the month in a respectful way. And they want their kids to go to a proper school. So the things that we want are basically the same. The only problem is that we don't have the political, agenda, or the politicians who will give us a way and a path on how to reach it. They are working against us because they work for their own political benefit. So we understood that in order to change the political system, we need to grow a popular movement, a left popular movement that demands what is in the benefit of people. And this is how we started in the streets. We went out, There was a lot of violence in our streets, and we demonstrated the first demonstration to end the violence that started happening after the war of 2014 on Gaza. And we spoke of simple things. We said we want peace, we want to live in safety, we want an end to the occupation, and we don't want violence in our streets. And we were amazed to see thousands of people come with us to the streets to demonstrate. And it made us understand that there are bigger numbers of people who want the same things than we thought at the beginning. So we're not like this small, minority who doesn't know what's happening. So in order to build a different political agenda, a different left, we needed to work on the issues that affect the lives of the people living in Israel. And this is why in each and every struggle that we led, the strategy is to think of what is a struggle that is common to more people within our society that can bring more people together. So we had a struggle for raising the minimum wage because Israel is a very expensive country. We had a campaign against the violence. We had the campaign against the police brutality towards minorities inside of Israel. With all of these campaigns, we were able to reach different groups. We were able to build a movement, and we became the largest grassroots movement inside of Israel that had both, Jews and Palestinians, but not just Jews and Palestinians, but also people from the center, the periphery, secular people, religious people. And it was because we demanded that the daily issues of the people will be dealt by the politicians. And this is how we see it, changing. If we want to change something, we need to build a movement that can demand a change from the streets, and by that putting pressure on our politicians. So when October the 7th happened, we were a big, strong movement with more than, 6,000 members in it. And we were able also to act in the streets.
Okay, so like standing together is, as when I get it right, like a very inclusive movement. But
Yes.
I also lived for some time in Israel, and I think, to put it mildly, there are some big divides in the society.
Huge divides.
So I'm wondering, like, how do you like when you want to be an inclusive movement? How do you navigate like those deep structural divides in Israeli society, like Jewish, Palestinian, Mizrahi, Ashkenazi, secular, religious, like center, periphery? Like, how do you navigate through those divides?
Our theory of change is, again, to look on what most of us want. Just give you an example. There was a one day where we had a meeting. A lot of people entered the room, and you couldn't really know who's Arab, who's Jewish, who's not, and what's the religion of everybody else. And I had some kind of a opening, and I asked people, I want to ask you a question, and then just raise your hand if your answer is yes. And I asked them, do you think that we all deserve to earn more money? So the whole room raised their hand. And then I asked, do you think that we deserve a housing that is affordable for us? They all raised their hands. Do you think that your kids deserve a proper school? They raised their hand. And then I asked, do you think that we deserve to go out in our streets not being scared of a missile coming down on our heads? All of them raised their hands. So beginning from the things that we agree on, the things that we want to change is a ground that you can work with. And this is how we do it. This is the strategy. We ask the questions of the daily lives of people, and slowly we get to the point of, bigger issues of occupation, of apartheid. But by doing that, by working on these issues and by politicizing people and giving them also, we do trainings, we do a lot of meetings, we do political education also. You in community organize it, we call it ladder of engagement. You take people from one stage, one level to the next level, and you do it by the actions that you do. So when, for example, now when you see missiles coming down on Tel Aviv and you have a solidarity group of both, Jews and Arabs going and cleaning the shelter or the place that has been damaged, you see solidarity. So you understand that not all Arabs want to kill the Jews, for example. Okay. And when you bring, shelters to the south, you understand that not all Jews don't care about the Bedouins who live. So this is how you do it, by action, by working, by organizing people. And this is how we try also to deal with the bigger questions in order to build something that is different in our society. And we do it by saying, look, we are the people who have been able to change things in our reality, but our government hasn't been able to do, which means that the way we are handling the politics, we are handling the situation, is the way that our governments should be working. It is a very tiring, slow work that you have, and you need a lot of patience. But this is community organizing. Nothing changes at the same time. It takes you time, and the fact that we survived October the 7th as a movement, the fact that we also thrived after October the 7th, means that we've been doing things, in a way that it made it sustainable for people. People found a political home in standing together, and they wanted to stay.
Yes. Okay. So standing together, as we just discussed, tries to build bridges across racial, religious, class, or whatever other lines. Of course, that approach goes against the interests of certain other actors.
Yes, of course.
On the right, mostly.
Yeah.
So how is your work on the ground received? Meaning, what kinds of obstacles or backlash do you face personally and professionally?
Personally,
yeah.
I think, today, especially after October the 7th, many people know who Standing Together is. They recognize the purple color. Yes. This is our color. Yes. Like when they see it, they understand this is the movement of those Arabs and Jews together, against the war, for having a ceasefire, bringing back the hostages. And it happened because we were in the streets. After October the 7th, we, the third day of the attack, when Hamas attacked the south of Israel, we went out and we said, what we need is not a retaliation, but we need a deal, a hostage deal. This is the thing to do. Not to bomb Gaza, not to kill people in Gaza, but to have a deal, a political deal. Because this is not the war, the first war between Israel and Gaza. And from that point on, we kept on bringing the voice of, we don't want to live in endless wars. We need solutions and we need alternatives. And the alternative is going to political deals. And then we demanded a ceasefire and we went out to the streets. Until this day, there is not even one weekend that we do not demonstrate for a ceasefire, for ending the war on Gaza, ending the starvation. And we were able to have, bigger campaigns that kind of shifted the public opinion when it comes to the war on Gaza. One of the major ones were, the aid convoy. We asked people to donate food to Gaza. And by doing that, actually speaking about the starvation in Gaza, a thing that the Israeli mainstream media didn't speak about for a whole year and a half. Only now they are showing, pictures in Gaza. So in one way, we ask people to come and take part by saying we disagree to the starvation, but we also acknowledge and realize what's really happening in Gaza. So all of these actions made us very popular, okay, for the bad and the good populism in it. It made many other people join the movement because they were able to do something against the war. But at the same time, it made us, once you get stronger and you can affect the political view in Israel, the government also sees you and they want to make more troubles for you. So this is one thing we don't really speak about. We don't want to show that we are, persecuted because then people will be afraid to join us.
Yeah.
But a lot of us had, been threatened by right-wing, activists in a very blunt way. Like they write to us, we know where you live, this is your address, we will come, and stuff like that. And they made us a lot of troubles when we were able to collect 400 trucks of aid to Gaza by not allowing it to go in for a whole 2 months. So we had to do a lot of work around it. So on the personal level, there was a point where we needed to evacuate our homes, our office in Tel Aviv, Jaffa. And it's not easy, to tell you the truth. But, you know, we are a movement of collective. We are a lot of people. It's not just one person or two persons. So even when something like these happen, you have your movement. You have people who will support you. But it doesn't mean it's an easy path to go through it. But I would say that one of the, maybe sometimes a good thing that they show us as a
enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state, because then many more people know who you are and see what you have been doing and become curious of what are they doing. I want to let's try to understand if we approve or not, or maybe we don't have any other opinion. But yes, it's not an easy journey, especially that when with this war and this government. So it's one of the most fascist governments Israel has ever had, like really right-wing, you know, people who speak, you know, of genocidal language, and they don't really care. They want to drop an atomic bomb on Gaza. So these are the kind of, and they are not afraid and not ashamed of even, you know, bringing laws that will take, you know, basic rights from people. Just now they are trying to pass a law that will allow them to deport immigrants in Israel without any trial. And they're trying also, another law is to hack your phone, my phone, without a court order, because we are at times of war. So they can listen to what I'm saying and they can take all of the stuff from my phone. So if I am arrested, they can take whatever information they want without asking for a court permission, because we are at a time of war. So this is the kind of government, and it's very scary, because just the same as in the US, they are making a lot of sanctions on NGOs, you know, civil society organizations, by not giving them any more money, not letting them get any more money from Europe. So very much, it's very scary back home.
Yes, like when was it? 2 years ago? I think it was shortly before the war, when they declared like 4 Palestinian and 2 Israeli NGOs, like terrorist organizations. Yeah, like stuff like this.
Yes,
or also like the German government, like they defunded a new profile, and I forgot the other name.
B'Tselem, I think.
No, it was a less known one, like new profile, and no, I forgot the other one. But like they were like, for many years, like they were funded like for like big amount of money, like for their like relatively speaking big amount of money, and they just cut it, you know.
This is a government that's not scared of doing that. Like it's a government that has spoken about, you know, the UNRWA and you know, how you say, doctors and nurses and paramedics who work like in Gaza. They said that they are all terrorists, so it's okay to kill them. So this is the kind of a government, you know, that we are dealing with.
Can you talk numbers a little bit? Like how many members do you have? Like, you know, I saw some of your initiatives. Like there are hundreds of people involved. Like, can you give some numbers and how they increased after October 7?
Yeah. So as I've said, Standing Together is a grassroots movement. We organize, mobilize people on different issues. But since October the 7th, we've been working only on one issue, ending, you know, the war on Gaza, the starvation, having a political deal to also be able to bring back, you know, the Israeli hostages home alive, not in coffins, which is something that our government very much wants, apparently. So since October the 7th, and because of the politics and what we were able to do on the ground and with people, we have grown. Today, we have more than 6,000 members, like paying members. We have a membership to the movement. So we have more than 6,000. We have chapters all over the country that has, you know, activists in it. Today, we have 12 local chapters from the north to the south of Israel. And we have 14 student chapters in different colleges and universities. And actually, we are the strongest and biggest, you know, power within campuses. And we are the first. The numbers now is on social media, we are the strongest, you know, political identity inside of Israel. We have more than, I would say, 400,000 people following us on different platforms. We have a lot of data of many people that get our, mail or newsletter. And we have, people, specific people, leaders from the movement that has much more followers on social media than any other political, figure in the Knesset. So yes, we have a lot of people listening to us. And we can, because we are a grassroots movement, we can, on the daily basis, we can mobilize hundreds of people to doing something, anything, whether it's on the digital level or on the, ground level.
Like some emergency
works.
Yes. Okay, on a little more personal note, like you kind of touched it already a bit, but you, as you said, you grew up in the Palestinian village of Kfar Yassif in the north, in Galilee. What were your personal and political experience that made you like an activist?
Okay.
What's your romantic way to activism?
Now we are born, most of us, we are born in homes to families that don't want us to be political. We are not encouraged in our homes to be political. My parents lived through the martial laws in Israel. In the north, there was years where you couldn't go out of your home. There was a curfew and there were like no basic rights to people. So my parents lived through that period. My grandparents lived through the Nakba, or the independence, the Declaration of Independence of the Israeli independence.
So you're like third generation Nakba?
I am third generation to Nakba, yes. So when you live, when you have these kind of grandparents and parents who lived through many inequalities and discriminations, they don't want you to be political, especially because you are a minority. So in our homes, they want us to be, very much educated, have a lot of degrees and have a good job and make good money. And one of the sentences that most of our parents tell us is that you need to be better than, the Israeli society. You need, because you are a minority, so you need to be much more better in order to be able to do what, they can they have, as free. This is how, living as a minority. So I wasn't political, but when you get out of your own village, for most of us, it happens at the age of 18. When you go to college, university, you meet the hegemony. You understand what it means to be a minority. A little, discrimination here and there, racism here and there. But for me, like the main event that made me understand that nobody is coming to help me. I need to help my own self, kind of. Was in a check, security check in the airport. Like most Palestinian citizens of Israel go through it. You get the first, security check, but they take you to a different room. That happens with me, and I was asked to strip off my clothes when I wanted to travel, at the age of 26. And it is one of the most, humiliating experiences a person can have, because, I was like, I just finished my degree. I just wanted to travel somewhere before I start my, career, big life of responsibilities. I just wanted to travel. And even my brother bought me my ticket because I didn't have money. And I was traveling to Italy. And then they just took me to a different room and they asked me to strip off. And there's no real reason. I am not a threat to the country. I'm just finished my degree. I have these debts on me, money that I have to return for school and stuff like that. It made me understand, how the country I live in, that I am supposed to be a citizen of it, sees me. And they see me as a threat, as something that needs to be reminded of its place again and again and again and again. So something switched a bit. And then came the 2014 war in Gaza. It was, until, October the 7th, it was a very harsh one. Many kids were killed, and it was in all of, Israeli newspapers, the numbers of kids that were killed in Gaza. And it changes something new. And, that was the point I understood. I wanted to be more political. I deserve better. We deserve better. So I started looking for more, activities to do. And in the nation, state law was, the time when I joined Standing Together. It was the beginning of Standing Together, and since then it is my political home.
Yeah, I remember in January 2023 there was you organized mass protests. So it was just in the beginning when like days or like 2 or 3 weeks after the current Netanyahu cabinet took office. Standing Together organized mass protests in Tel Aviv against like the most right-wing extremist government in Israeli history, as people like say it, like for good reason. I think you also got some like international recognition back then, like because of your like color, like the purple color. Yes, we were very like recognized. And those demonstrations were also largely due to the government's announced plans for like what they call judicial reform. Before we talk about the protests themselves, please remind us what was this judicial reform?
Well, it was, to make it very simple, the government wanted to control all kind of I would say hands that it could have. So you have the Knesset, then they have a majority, and then they have the locality, the municipality, and they have majority. But what stays is the judicial sector, like the main court and the courts. And what they wanted to do is to change the laws within the courts, so they would also have a majority of right-wing people within the courts of Israel, especially the Supreme Court. So in the Israeli law, if a Knesset establishes, approves a law, and that law contradicts with the Declaration of Independence of what it means, to have a democratic state, you can take it to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court says this law cannot be passed, it cannot be passed. So you have a Supreme Court that can basically, decline or change things that can happen in the Knesset, and they wanted to take control of that place by giving more laws. And this was the beginning of them, the right wing, very fascist, taking over basically all three main political, streams within the Israeli society or the Israeli politics, and so people went out to the streets against it.
And also like another aspect, at least that's what I hear often, because Israel doesn't have a constitution.
It doesn't.
It has like a set of 10 or something, 9.
Yes, basic. I don't know how you say it in
like
English.
Basic laws. It's called in
laws,
English, but it's like far from being a constitution. So there's no like checks and balances from that part. So the only real checks and balances is like the Supreme Court.
Yes.
So when you like just take this one out, then
exactly, and then you can pass any law that you want in the Knesset, and if you have a majority of people who are right-wing fascists in the Supreme Court, it means you can do whatever you want. It means you can give laws that says that Arab Palestinians cannot go to the Knesset, and then we will not have representation. You can give laws that says that they can throw me from my own home. It doesn't matter how many papers I give. It means taking control of everything and having no real opposition. And basically it means having right-wing fascist government for, I don't know, forever.
Okay, so you were organizing mass protests against it. So how successful were those demos, and how did they develop over time? Can you talk about
the first demonstration was a demonstration that we called for, and it was under the name of "This is the home of all of us," trying to put on the stage different people from different communities, different backgrounds, different political ideas that will speak against these steps that the government wants to do, by actually recognizing that this, judicial, whatever they wanted to do, will affect the lives of most of the people that live inside of Israel, but it's in the benefit of that specific government because it will keep them in power. So we wanted to show that there is, basic theory of change, of standing together, that it will affect all of us in a bad way, and this is why we need to fight it. So this was the beginning, the first one. But then, weeks after, these demonstrations looked a bit more different. It became a demonstration of, saving the democracy of Israel and speaking mostly, and again, to the Jewish Israeli society, and not talking about other issues that cannot keep on happening, like the occupation on the West Bank, the siege on Gaza, the rights of minorities within the Israeli society. And it became very different for the first half a year. And us as a movement, we tried for these months to shift public opinion by, having more demonstrations, especially within Palestinian towns and cities, and bringing more demonstrations into that specific demonstration to talk about, look, you cannot talk about democracy when you have people who do not have the same rights as yours. You cannot talk about democracy as long as you have occupation. You cannot talk about democracy as long as you have a law that says that you are, as a Jew, a first-class citizen, and I am, as a Palestinian or a non-Jew, a second-class citizen. So we try to affect these demonstrations, because if we are demonstrating for the democracy of some people and not for the freedom of all people, you are not doing any kind of a change. But still, people went out to the streets. I think it was for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. It's just we've been demonstrating for too many years. I don't remember how long.
Like, I think those mass protests,
Yeah,
they ended in October 7, like, more or less, right? Like, for some time at least.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, there were, like, missiles coming from Gaza into many cities, so people stayed home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but like before that, like, so before the war started, how did the state react to the demos and protests? Like, was it violent, or how was it?
Yeah, violence, police brutality became something very much more common towards everybody, and not just minorities, because, it was a demonstration of basically more of the left and center part of, Israeli society. These are the people who went out each and every week to really demonstrate. And for most of them, violence isn't something that is, used in these kind of demonstrations. Police uses that kind of violence towards minorities. Haredi people in Bnei Brak, Palestinian, asylum seekers inside of Israel. And then it kind of became much more popular. And they started just beating everybody, being like real brutal to everybody else. And it only, I think, strengthened these demonstrations. But they kept on happening. And I think 7 or 8 months after, it was the first time we stood as standing together on a stage on these demonstrations. And we said that there cannot be no democracy as long as there is occupation. So if we want, freedom for people, we need to demand freedom for everybody. And then many other things happened also in the West Bank, and something changed and shifted. There was a pogrom in Hawara, which is a Palestinian village within the West Bank.
I've driven there through many times. I lived in Nablus.
Yes,
which is just...
and we were able to have a march from, to the borders to get into Hawara, and there was a lot of violence by the Israeli military and police. And a chant became so popular within the Israeli demonstrations that it was, "Where were you at Hawara?" Like when people were burned alive, and something switched in people's minds.
Okay, like you said that your own activism started at 2018 roughly, so that was
2017.
So that was Netanyahu government. Then you had later
a year of Bennett and
one like half a year of Lapid.
Yeah. Who also chose to bomb Gaza in order to show that he's a prime minister.
And Bennett once like bragging how many Arabs he killed, and that it's like a great thing to kill Arabs. Yes. And now again Netanyahu, so at least like 4 different cabinets you did your activism under. Like, you think that there is no real like shift in terms of like crackdowns against dissidents and demonstrations, or is it more or less the same in the last 10-15 years, or did we really see like a shift now?
You mean again?
Like in terms of like crackdown on protests, like the violence, the state violence, police violence. Do you really see like a change in the last 2 years, or was it 10 years already the same shit? Or
no, for me, as a lefty and as a Palestinian, it is the same violence. Like when we went to go to Sheikh Jarrah, when we demonstrated for, for the police to do its job, because there is a huge wave of of violence and killing and within the Palestinian society, and the government isn't doing anything, and neither the police. So in each and every demonstration I went to, I was, there is violence. But today, now, with the judicial hall, and after October the 7th, and going out to the streets and demanding a deal, violence has become more common also in these demonstrations. So if you were talking about me, I get the same violence everywhere. But yes, something also changed. The police has become, I would say, a mafia controlled by Ben Gvir, who was, he's a Kahanist, fascist, who actually, just to talk about him, just for fun, he roams the streets of Tel Aviv, where you have, in one certain part, a lot of asylum seekers, and he walks there with all of his policemen, and he speaks to asylum seekers in a way. He asks them, "You should be deported. We will make sure to deport you." Just like this, in the middle of the day. So this is the kind of man who's responsible for our security, and he doesn't really care about our security. What he's doing is dismantling the police. So the police has more authorities right now to beat us up, to jail us, and even to jail us without any court. So many things are changing in a very bad and in a very rapid speed inside of Israel.
Just like a little, as a side note, you said Ben Gvir is a Kahanist. Can you please explain, like, for our listeners, what is Kahanism?
Yeah. Kahana, Kahana is, he used to be a Knesset member. He has a very crazy ideology that says that, Israel is the land of Jews and non-Jews shouldn't be living there. And that man has... he believes that killing non-Jews is something right to do because, like, Israel was promised for Jewish people. He's a very right-wing extremist that does not care, of talking about violence and killing other people. And the people who follow him, we call them Kahanists. It's the same idea. So when you hear Ben Gvir and Smotrich speaking about, killing all the Palestinians, transporting all of them, just throwing them to the borders of Egypt, this is the Kahanist way of thinking. But the thing that changed is that when Kahana was a member of the Knesset back in the 80s, 90s, when he used to go up and speak in the Knesset, all of the Knesset members used to stand up and leave. They will not give him any kind of respect. Yes, you were chosen by people, but your ideas are very, speaks of supremacy and violence and killing people, that will not give you even the respect to listen to you. But slowly by slowly, many people who still believe in him and follow him became stronger within our society, and one of them is also Ben Gvir. Yeah.
I think there was also this anecdote that, was it Ben Gvir or Smotrich? I think it was Smotrich, that he for a long time had a like a portrait of Baruch Goldstein.
Yeah.
Oh, was it Ben Gvir? Like, it was a portrait of Baruch Goldstein over his night table hanging.
Yeah, Baruch Goldstein is a man who went into a mosque in Hebron and shot the Palestinians, Muslim Palestinians who were praying in the mosque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so really open fascists in the government.
Very much.
Yes. Let's talk about Gaza a bit more. Your group once launched the so-called Humanitarian Guard initiative to protect aid convoys and civilians. What is that initiative exactly, and what have you learned from these, from your work at the front lines?
Well, at the beginning of the war on Gaza, for a whole a year, there was the issue of humanitarian aid going into Gaza, not going into Gaza, Israel controlling the borders and not letting anything go in, as a collective punishment, as a way of, also a tactic of war to make people starve. So as a movement that, we believe that we can change reality by acting and organizing people. So we called out for people at the beginning of it. It was last year, when Israel agreed, after a pressure by the Americans, to let trucks go in that would have aid from international organizations. Settlers, when right-wing settlers saw that these trucks are going into Gaza, they said, we cannot let terrorists in Gaza get that food, so we need to destroy the trucks. And then all of us woke up into pictures of settlers destroying food, throwing it on the floor, burning it. And we understood that we needed to do something different. So we called out for people and we told them, we do not agree to starving people. We need to do something. And we called people to come to a humanitarian guard in order to guard these trucks on their way, inside of Israel, to get to the borders with Gaza. And we had, I think, 1,500 people enlist in 2 days, which is a huge number. So we started shifts. We stayed at the borders, in Tarqumia. It's the place where they get from the West Bank inside of Israel, and from there they continue to Gaza. And that was in one of these places, the settlers will come and attack the trucks because the trucks drive really slowly when they get out of a checkpoint. Yes. So it's easier to stop them. Yes. So we had shifts for a month, 2 shifts, morning shift and night shift, to try and just, to stand between the settlers and the trucks. So that at the beginning, when we arrived, there was no one, and the settlers could do whatever they want. So we came for 3-4 days, and at the 5th day, the police understood, you have these crazy purple people coming, and you have international media, taking footage of Israelis kind of fighting with one another, and we don't want that. So they started coming to the borders also, to that checkpoint. And what they did is just, to separate between us and the settlers, which ended up by enabling the trucks to move freely and to really get into Gaza. And we kept doing that for a month. And after a month, that same, organization of settlers declared that they will not be stopping, the aid into Gaza. They will do something else. They didn't want to say that they have failed, and that we kind of were able to kind of, beat them. And the trucks were able to move freely into Gaza. So that was the first step that we did with the humanitarian guard. But then we understood that we need to talk more also. The Israeli society needed to understand what was really happening in Gaza, that there was real starvation in Gaza, because the media, our media, wasn't really speaking about it, and people didn't see it. So the way of us to show what was really happening is to call people again into action. And that time was, we just had a video of saying, there is starvation in Gaza. We cannot, stand aside and look at it. So we need to do something. So we want to collect aid to people in Gaza. And we thought we're going to have a week of collecting food and essential things like shampoo and hygienic stuff and, baby formula. And it just exploded everywhere. And we ended up for a whole month just moving from one Palestinian town to another town and collecting aid. And it became, this huge, I don't know how to say it, act of also resisting the war, but being able to do something, to say something against the war, by just donating food. So we ended up with 400 trucks of food and essential stuff.
So those 400 trucks are just stuff gathered from Palestinian villages.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of food, basic stuff, hygienic. Like people just. The thing is that it was also one thing we wanted to do, because for Palestinian citizens, after October the 7th, there has been a huge discrimination. You couldn't speak about Gaza. You couldn't write anything about Gaza. So what we do is we think, what can we do to enable people to take action, to do something? And we said, okay, let's collect aid. We talked to many, humanitarian organizations. We had a contract with one of them, and we said, we will collect the food. We will give it to you because you have an agreement with, at the end of it, it's the Israeli, military that you have a contract with that will enable the pass of these trucks into Gaza. This is how it works. We can do it ourselves. So we gave it to an international organization. We collected and we tried to give it to them. And when it all happened and people really went out of their homes and did something for Gaza, they saw, a success in what we were able to do. So the government said, your food cannot get into Gaza. You are not allowed.
Hmm.
And from that point, there was 2 months of speaking to everyone, going everywhere, trying to put pressure on the government, trying to understand what other organization can take these trucks and get it into Gaza. It took us 2 months, long 2 months that we needed to understand. But at the end of it, we were able to get more than 280 trucks into Gaza.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes, it was a huge, campaign.
You just mentioned that after October 7, racism against Israeli, Palestinians in Israel, skyrocketed. I also have stories from friends in Israel. It's just insane. Can you talk about that a bit, please? And I think there was also even just after the government, the new government took office, that almost a year until the war started. Also in that period, there was already rising everyday racism.
Yeah.
Or also those layoffs, that people got fired in masses.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. Since October the 7th, again, whenever there is a war, what this government does, and just to be, to underline it again, is Bibi Netanyahu has been the prime minister for as long as I remember. There's a whole generation that does not know any other prime minister. Yes, there was Bennett and Lapid for 1 year, but then
that doesn't really count.
Bibi Netanyahu has been a prime minister for 18 years in Israel. Okay, a whole generation does not know anybody else, as if there are no other alternatives. And with each and every government, it became more right wing. So right wing governments don't really like human rights and don't really like democracy, and we see it everywhere. It's also happening in Europe and in the US. Yes. So when there is a war, when there is anything happening between Israel and in the West Bank, in Gaza, they use it in order to separate people, to say, these are our enemies. Okay, there is no partner. We cannot be friends with them. And what we try to do is to show the contrary, that no, our enemy is this government, the government that does not care about our lives, the government that wants us to stay in wars. This is the kind of thing that we try to build. There's us and them. So at times of war, they use it in order to separate people, to bring more discrimination. And as a minority, it is easier to be, targeted. So whenever anybody after October the 7th, doctors who worked in hospitals, who just wrote something about the pain of kids in Gaza because they're being bombed and there's hospitals are being bombed, they were asked, they were kicked out from work. Students in faculties and in universities, if they would even put a like on a post on Instagram and on Facebook that speaks about Gaza, they were asked to come to a reform committee. They will tell them, if you write anything more about Gaza, you will be disqualified. You won't be able to finish your degree. And it happened to a lot of people. And by numbers, I think it was 1,400 Palestinian citizens who were accused of taking as supporting terror. That's what they said. But at the end of it, 99% of them were not accused of anything. So this was a way of, again, reminding you of your place. So what we did as a movement, we started a campaign called Emergency Line, called Hotline also, where students could call us, tell us what it's happening to them, what kind of persecution, racism it's happening because of the war. And we would navigate them to the help that they need. If it's, to speak to someone, if it's to find a lawyer, if it's just you're afraid to go out of your home, so you need people to come with you, especially if you're if you have a hijab and you live in Jerusalem, you can, more violence can happen to you. And it was part of the solidarity groups that we had all over the country to help us to understand that we are going through this also together, so we need to help one another. And by doing that, we had, a huge spike also with people coming into standing together and being part. And that emergency line, it was basically, it opened and it worked for a whole 8 months, and it had 1,000 volunteers in it. Just volunteers, just people volunteering and trying to help at these times. And it was all because people were fired from their jobs, from universities, like even like, you know, working in a place for years, and then like your own manager would come and tell you you support terror, and just to kick you out of work for no reason is something that is, you know, unbearable. Sometimes you don't know how to manage it. But this became, you know, the reality of many people, especially Palestinians after October the 7th. But not just Palestinians, also any lefties who would write anything against the war, against the government, had the same response.
It's often, or like I heard it sometimes, that the comparison is drawn, you know, Israel is part of the West, like of the global North, kind of.
Like, the only democracy in the Middle East.
Sure. No, but I mean also like in terms of like industrial development and stuff, it's more like a European country. And like when you get cynical, you can say, yeah, Israel doesn't need like the third world because it has the third world just right at the doorstep, like with the Palestinians, like who do all the like shit jobs, like work construction and like cleaning and stuff. But also after this big wave of like firing after October 7, and like I heard that you're trying to get like people from what, like Bangladesh, Nepal, like to do all those
there
shit
was a
jobs
talking
now.
about and also like the how do you say, the health system has in it a very more than, I think 45% of it is like Palestinian doctors and nurses. So this is one of the branches that is very much has a lot of Palestinian working in it. So when they wanted to fire people from their jobs, they started talking about bringing people from I think Morocco also and Egypt, but it doesn't work that way. You can't just like bring somebody and take over the jobs of other people. But these were like one of the agendas the government wanted to do. It didn't work much for them, but when it comes to construction, yes, a lot of people were replaced. A lot of people from the West Bank actually also work inside of Israel in construction and you know, the whole food industry. And when it stopped, when you know the borders were closed, you know, there was a lack of working hands. Which is again a problem to economy. You know, at the end of it also. And you know, this 2 years of war has been like everything that's happening. But if you look at the economic situation of Israel, it's becoming, you know, worse with each and every day. It is because of all of these elements together. Because if you do not encourage your people to work, if you don't have jobs for your people, then, you know, your estate will become lower. And you can't really handle it by just bringing people from abroad that will work the same jobs. You need to end the war. You need to let people come back to their own works, give them more permits, and, you know, open your places. And again, we're going into this, been a week now with the war with Iran, where shops are closed. Nobody is out in the streets. Like it's a ghost city for most of the places.
Okay, like to wrap it up, the war in Gaza, there's not really like an end in sight. What is standing together is like, I don't know, vision, or what are your demands, like political demands, but also like your concrete things planned. Do you have anything concrete planned for the near future?
Well, what we've been doing all of this time, and even after October the 7th, is that we are building a different political agenda. We are building a political power from within the streets that speaks about the benefit of the people living in Israel. Okay, and we know that in the benefit of the people to end these wars, and we know that the majority of the people inside of Israel do not support this government that is taking us from one war to another war, and we need to put more pressure on our politicians to basically be a real opposition, which they are not doing that right now. This is our main work. We believe and we know that wars are not the answer. We know that. Everybody knows that. We deserve better. We deserve a life of security, a life of prosperity to everybody who is living. And as long as we're in a state where there is no political action, no alternative, you don't have, you know, on the menu, somebody telling you this is your alternative, nothing will really change. So our main work is still to build that political power that understand that wars are not the answer. Occupation of millions of people should stop. Military controlling millions of people should stop. And having real equality within the citizens of Israel is something that we all must, demand and have. And this is the work we keep on doing. Like today, now we can't go out and demonstrate for a week. But it doesn't mean it's going to be like that. I don't know what's going to happen next week. But our main demand and main work is to organize people around these ideas, around these demands, to go out to the streets, to have them in digital campaigns and in the field, talking to as much more people that you can in order to, build a bigger power from within the Israeli society. What we want is very simple. Really, it is very simple. We want a different political agenda and different political idea that puts the interest of people in the front. And the interest of people is living in safety, living in security, and living in peace. And as long as we will have wars, this will not happen. And as long as there is occupation, this will not happen. So we need to put an end and a stop to all of these injustices that are happening by having, a demand from the people, from the streets. And this is what we are trying to build. Yeah, it is not easy.
Yes.
And it will not happen tomorrow. But again, we don't really have the privilege to give up. Nobody will come from abroad and save us. Nobody has come from outside and said, this is the time when we will help Israelis and Palestinians. It doesn't work that way. If we do not go out to the streets, if we do not demand, if we don't take action, if we don't organize, nothing will really change. And this is what we're trying to do as a grassroots movement.
Yeah, I think these are great closing remarks. So, thanks, Rula, for your time. Thanks for your great work. Say hi to all your colleagues, please, when you're hopefully back.
Hopefully back very
soon. Sound. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, then thanks everyone for tuning in to 99 zu 1 and see you next time. Bye bye.
Leute, wir brauchen eure Hilfe. Wenn euch dieses Video gefallen hat, klickt auf Like, abonniert den Kanal und vergesst nicht das Glöckchen zu drücken, damit ihr benachrichtigt werdet, wenn wir neuen Content droppen.
Außerdem solltet ihr uns überall folgen, wo wir verfügbar sind. Das ist Facebook, Instagram, Twitter und Twitch. Und wenn wir irgendwelche Ankündigungen machen oder Posts, dann shared, was das Zeug hält. Gebt uns all eure Liebe.
Wir haben mittlerweile ziemlich signifikante Kosten. Wenn ihr es euch irgendwie leisten könnt, unterstützt uns doch auf Patreon. Dann kommt ihr auch in den Genuss verschiedener Vorteile, wie zum Beispiel Zugang zu unserer Discord-Community oder Zugang zu den ultrageheimen Patreon-Episoden, die wir dort posten. Außerdem könnt ihr uns natürlich auch über PayPal Spenden zukommen lassen.
Außerdem haben wir mittlerweile einen eigenen Online-Shop. Das heißt, wenn ihr euch immer noch fragt, was ihr euren Lieben zu Weihnachten, Ostern oder sonst wie schenken könnt, geht dorthin und kauft duftes Merch.
Alle Links dazu hier in der Beschreibung oder auch auf unserer Webseite 99zu1.de.
Vielen Dank fürs Dabeisein, danke für die Unterstützung und wir sehen uns in diesem Theater.